Shalom Aleichem, this is Rabbi Moshe Otero, and we're going to start a little bit of the topic which may be a little bit controversial for many of you who have seen my videos. And one of the things that we're going to talk about is what is Jesus to the Jews, and who really is this Jesus? Obviously, when we enter into this topic, there's going to be a lot of opinions, a lot of different perspectives, and one thing that we want to concern ourselves is to look at the historical persona, if there even was such a thing. A recent book that came out that talks about Caesar's Messiah, it puts into question even the veracity and the validity to the existence of this person in history. And they look at it, or the author looks at it from a perspective that it was a complete propaganda, political propaganda, in order to go against the messianic movements that were in place at that time. Whether that is in fact the case or not, one of the things I want us to look at is what is this Jesus to us Jews, and who really was this person, Jesus, translated in Hebrew as Yehoshua. Now, I'm going to recite or repeat the words of Joseph Klausner in his conclusion of Jesus of Nazareth in page 413, because I think he well places it and explains the position of Jews in general in regards to Jesus. And there's no step in the life of Jesus, he says, and no line in his teaching on which is not stamped the seal of prophetic Pharisaic Judaism and Palestine of his day, the close of the period of the Second Temple. Hence, it is somewhat strange to ask, what is Jesus to the Jews? Jesus, says Wellhausen, was not a Christian. He was a Jew. And as a Jew, his life story is that of one of the prominent men of the Jews of his time, while his teaching is Jewish teachings of a kind remarkable in its truth and its imaginativeness. Jesus was not a Christian, but he became a Christian. His teaching and his history have been severed from Israel. To this day, the Jews have never accepted him, while his disciples and followers of every generation have scoffed at it, persecuted the Jews and Judaism. But even so, we cannot imagine a work of any value touching upon the history of the Jews in during the time of the Second Temple, which does not include the history of Jesus and to estimate of his teachings. What therefore does Jesus stand for in the eyes of the Jews at the present time? Keep in mind, he's writing this in the 18th century, which is still even good till today's century. From the standpoint of general humanity, he is indeed a light to the Gentiles. His disciples have raised the light torch of the law of Israel, even though the law has been put forward in a mutilated and incomplete form among the heathens of the four quarters of the world. No Jew can therefore overlook the value of Jesus and his teachings from the viewpoint of universal history. This was a fact which neither Maimonides nor Yehuda Halevi ignored. But from the national Hebrew standpoint, it is more difficult to appraise the value of Jesus. In spite of the fact that he himself was undoubtedly a nationalist, Jew by instinct, and even an extreme nationalist, as we may see from his retort to the Canaanitish woman, from his depreciatory ways referring to the heathens and the publicans, from the term sons of Abraham, daughters of Abraham, which he uses as a term of the highest possible commendation, which he uses the term in this form, from his deep love for Jerusalem, and from his devoting himself so entirely to the cause of the lost sheep of the house of Israel, to such an extent that he himself saw himself as the shepherd of the house of Israel. In spite of all of this, there was in him a hint, something out of which arose non-Judaism. What is Jesus to the Jewish nation at the present day? To the Jewish nation, he can neither be God nor the Son of God in the sense conveyed by the belief of the Trinity. Either conception is to the Jew not only impious or impious, and blasphemous, but incomprehensible. Neither can he to the Jewish nation be the Messiah. The kingdom of the heavens, the days of the Messiah is not yet come. Neither can they regard him as a prophet. He lacks the prophet's political perception and the prophet's spirit of national consolation in the political national sense. Neither can they regard him as a lawgiver or the founder of a new religion. He did not even desire to be such. Neither is he a Tana or a Pharisaic rabbi. He nearly always ranged himself in opposition to the Pharisees and did not apprehend the positive side in their work. The endeavor to take within the scope the entire national life and to strengthen the national existence. But Jesus is, for the Jewish nation, a great teacher of morality, an artist in parable. He is a moralist for whom in the religious life morality counts. As everything, indeed, as consequences of this, extremist standpoints of his ethical code has become simply an ideal for an isolated few, a Zukunft Musik, an ideal for the days of the Messiah, when an end shall have been made of this old world and this present social order. It is no ethical code, says Joseph Klausner, for the nations and social order of the day, when men are still trying to find the way to the future Messiah and the prophets into the kingdom of the Almighty spoken of by the Talmud, and an ideal which is of this world, and which gradually and in the course of generations is to take shape in this world. But in his ethical code there is a sublimity, a distinctiveness and originality in form unparalleled in any other Hebrew ethical code. Neither is there any parallel to the remarkable art of his parables, the shrewdness and sharpness of his proverbs, and his forceful epigrams serve, in an exceptional degree, to make ethical ideas a popular possession. If ever the day should come, and this ethical code be stripped of its wrappings of miracles and mysticism, the book of the ethics of Jesus will be one of the choicest treasures in the literature of Israel for all time. Now, Joseph Klausner writes this in 1922 in Jerusalem during the 16th of March Cheshvan. Interesting note by Joseph Klausner, who wrote extensively on the life of Jesus, or known as Yeshua. Now when we get to the point, who is this Jew? Obviously we run into an entire plethora of different opinions, from a Jesus who's very Romanized, very Catholic, very Christian, to one who is in fact, as we read by Wellhausen, to be in fact a Jew. Now we would present Jesus as a Jew, everything changes. The whole contextual position of this person within the mainframe and within the body of Israel takes a whole different picture. It isn't Jews who should see Jesus as Christ of Christianity, nor believe in him to be the Christ, but Christians who should be made aware of Jesus' Jewishness. That Jesus was a devoted Jew is openly narrated over and over again throughout the New Testament. Jesus is openly narrated over and over again as a Jew, belief in God, his faith, the faith of the Hebrews of his time. Observance of the Jewish religion by Jesus is something that's paramount, though he may have different opinions regarding those who were with him. As a dedicated Jewish man, he taught Jews, the Jews exclusively to do God's will, which he found in the Torah. What he expounds to the multitudes came from Jewish heritage. He was a religious person within the mainstream of Judaism who understood the Torah's eternal nature and value. Jesus was born a Jew, spoke as a Jew, Hebrew, and lived as a Jew, prayed as a Jew, went to synagogue as a Jew, observed Shabbat, and even in some points, even though there was discrepancy, still kept Shabbat, and died still a devout Jew. He never discarded or debased Judaism, but extolled it. Nor did he find a new religion to replace Judaism. That was the job of another one of his followers who even went against his own words, Paul or Shaul. Jesus was not an apostate, nor did he teach others to leave Judaism. So if being Jewish was good enough for Jesus, why shouldn't all Jews feel the same? And in the new developments of the new faith, we find that even these messianic groups of today have veered completely off the path of what even this Jewish Jesus taught, which obviously puts a big question as to who they really believe in. Yes, all of this can be discovered even in the New Testament. Under the layers and among all the strands which comprise Christian book, we can find that the Jewish Jesus, before Christianity made its own Jesus of their own, a whole different makeup. Jews have no need to search the New Testament to verify Judaism. The Hebrew Bible, God's holy word, which stands complete for us. It is interesting to know that Christianity agrees with the Hebrew Bible. What the Christians call Old Testament. It's God's holy book. Not necessarily the New Testament is the same. They combine it with the New Testament to one holy Bible, which they called the Bible. It wasn't there before. All that was considered holy Bible was what we call the Tanakh. So while Christians must probe our scriptures for passages which lend credence to their beliefs, Jews have no such reciprocal need. They need us. We don't need them. Nevertheless, although we have no need to seek reinforcement of Judaism from the outside scriptures, it's astonishing to locate such reinforcement, discover it does exist. The New Testament itself has in it a deadly poison for those who truly understand. It's Judaism from within. Judaism advocates, fully understands the New Testament is about Christianity's Christ. It has been warped. It has been changed. And you might even say that today's Christianity is really Caesar's Messiah. The Christian scriptures present a new religion based on Jesus being the Messiah or Christ, the only begotten Son of God, the second part of a triune God. Christianity says he came to earth to be sacrificed for the sins of mankind, so that those who believe in him, this can save him and give him eternal life. That essentially is a Christian belief, not a Jewish one. But this same New Testament, which relates the story of the Christian Savior, also details a Yeshua, as a man who lived and died as a faithful Jew. This same Jesus, or Yeshua, is the underlying strand of the New Testament, and it belongs fully to Judaism. But selective extractions from the New Testament of what the Jewish advocates would call reverse proof text, it can be demonstrated that the Jewish religion has a sacred essence. In these verses are shown the eternal bond between God and his chosen people Israel, the Jews. All these biblical quotes, which expresses the truth of our Jewish beliefs, are from Christianity's New Testament itself. In other words, although we need not their book to prove our faith, nevertheless in their book contains elements of our faith to such an extent that it could bring to asunder, to complete bankruptcy, the Christian faith. The reverse proof texts have clarity and simplicity. The verses' traditional meaning cannot be misinterpreted. The language is taken from the King James Version of the New Testament and correctly presented, even though a selected reverse proof text lies side by side with a verse of Christological import. This does not negate the other. What is meant here is that when we look at it, it will read you in direct terms. Selected extractions of reverse proof text is not intended to disprove Christianity. What is presented is pro-Judaism, not anti-Christianity. Judaism's advocates quoting reverse proof text do not want to expect to diminish the Christian belief in his religion. However, we do hope and intend to make firm the Jew's belief in his own God, a God-given faith. The Jew's attachment to Judaism will be strengthened. We see that Judaism has it, never has lost it. Even as seen in the New Testament, the Jewish religion has always been the pathway to God, a means for life, everlasting. Is plainly acknowledged by the words of Jesus the Jew, Yeshua ben Yosef himself. Of course, the New Testament contains a validation of Judaism's eternal truth, it must be very surprising to most Jewish people who have no reason to open up its pages. It's not a book to be read, but a book of dread for the Jews throughout our long suffering. Through the pages of the New Testament, Judaism is vilified, it's condemned, Jews are defamed, despised, and the cross is made to impale God's chosen people. It brought hope of salvation to the Christians, but only to severe persecutions and misery to the Jews. And this historically cannot be denied, that while Judaism suffered under the hands of Christianity's greatest pogroms and persecution, all in the name of the book that caused such slaughters. It is a book of teaching hate for Jews, and such it remains to this day. Therefore, it should be shocking for most Jews to learn that in its pages are also found the words of confirmation that Judaism is of God eternally. This is why so many Jews who found themselves lost in the ways of the world and being disconnected from the faith of our forefathers find in some unique way a light within the New Testament to bring them back to some sort of Judaism. Yes, some sort, I would say distorted or perverted, but yet some sort of Judaism that they were able to grasp to the eternal truths that Judaism has always held. No doubt, it also should be surprising to most Christians who read their Holy New Testament with that Christian orientation. The reverse proof text can be gathered to support Judaism. These strands of early origins can be found between the strands of preaching the quote-unquote good news. Christians may not think that the book is pro-Judaism passages are very important. They can be ignored by those seeking salvation of the New Testament, and furthermore, the Christians may not even realize the verses are a vindication of Judaism. Christianity must explain always these verses in ways that are incompatible with scriptural vituperations against the Jews and Judaism. It cannot be the pronouncement of Judaism's ineffectual nature and the demise of Christianity's power and the succession that exists in the same holy book, in the same New Testament, with open declarations of Judaism being God's bestowed, the Judaism being God bestowed and eternal. Or can this be? Can it be that the New Testament affirms the validity of Judaism as a way to God eternally and directly? The Christian scripture promotes Judaism's obliteration. Can it be that the same Christian Bible, as well as Judaism's supporter, read and see this? My friends that are involved in the Messianic movement, you have in your hands, as believers supposedly in Jesus, a very deadly book. And I say deadly because in it has the power to understand that Jesus' Judaism was the Judaism of the first century and so many that followed. Nevertheless, it also contains the adverse effect of the Roman power of Caesar's Messiah. Let's take a look for a moment of his family and the lack of the holy awe. Jesus, whose birth name was Yehoshua ben Yosef, was the firstborn in a large family of blood brothers and sisters. His mother Mary, or Miriam, therefore was not an eternal virgin, as many would say. His father was known by the people to be Jesus' father of heritage and a carpenter, and I would even say his physical parent. But when we take a look at very key passages and compared other manuscripts of the New Testament, we would come to realize that in fact this whole entire virgin birth myth was actually created by the later church fathers and not from earlier documents. 4 brothers' names are given, and at least 3 sisters. The word brethren in the Greek designates the blood brother relationship, not his disciples. His family was not far from him during his life. We are given no information about Jesus' age from 12 up to about 30. I would say he was probably in yeshiva learning. when his public ministry began, which lasted only about 1 to 3 years. Let's read some of these passages, would you mind? Matthew chapter 1 and also Luke chapter 2 verse 7 says, "Till she had brought forth her firstborn son, he called his name Jesus." Notice it doesn't say Emmanuel. Those of you who studied with me the authenticity of Matthew in our series in English will understand how a lot of these verses have been changed in the original by the church fathers. John 6 verse 42, John chapter 1 verse 45, and Luke chapter 4 verse 22, we read, "Is not this Jesus," and I want you to read this, "is not this Jesus the son of Joseph?" Literally, the concept was that Jesus was the son of Joseph, whose father and mother we know. Obviously, the people knew the father and mother. Jesus' father was Joseph. Of course, this contradicts Christian dogma and the position that which Jesus was born of the Holy Spirit, which, if you look at it closer in the Greek, it was an implication of an impregnation of the spirit or soul of the Messiah, not, as many have been teaching around there, that he was born of a virgin. But leave that to the Christians to mangle up in their own translations. Matthew chapter 13 verse 55 through 56 and Mark 6 verse 3, it says, "Is this not the carpenter's son? Is this not his mother called Mary? And his brethren, James, which is Jacob, Josea, and Shimon, and Judah, and his sisters, are they not all with us?" John chapter 2 verse 12, "He and his mother and his brethren and his disciples." Luke chapter 8 verse 19 verse through 20, and Matthew chapter 12 verse 46 through 47, and Mark chapter 3 verse 31 through 32. "Then came him, his mother and his brethren, and could not come at him for the press. And it was told by him by certain which said, Thy mother and thy brethren stand without desiring to see thee." Now, what we have shown you is that Jesus' family background, and we want to inquire of this importance, this relationship, should truly be startling revelation of a nature beyond anything imaginable, of a heavenly dimension, being forever influencing the life of a human being who you might say received and is affected by this revelation? Surely yes. Why then is the relationship of Jesus and Mary so lacking in awe and reverence, respect? Luke chapter 1 verse 26 through 35 relates the remarkable story of Mary and the angel Gabriel. Now Mary is told by the angel that without knowing a man, but with God's intervention alone, she would conceive and give birth to a child. The child, she is told, is to be the Messiah. Is this not a dumbfounding scene? Angels talking, virgin birth, Messiah child? In Luke chapter 2 verse 7 and verse 8, the birth occurs with Joseph there. Shepherds are told by an angel that this is the Messiah who is born, is lying in a manger. Of course, this is what we call the Christmas story. This is why I'm doing this right now, just prior to the Christmas season. The story in Matthew chapter 2, verse 1 through 2, and verse 11 has wise men of the east following the star to find the newborn King of the Jews, the Messiah. Even Elizabeth, Mary's cousin, knew of the supposed miraculous event. For in Luke chapter 1, verse 42 through 43, we read, "Blessed art thou, Mary, or Miriam, among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb. Whence is this to me, that the mother of my Lord should come to me?" Now, of course, in the Greek, the word Lord Kurios is not necessarily referring to God, but referring to the Master. Joseph also knew of the New Testament miracle, because in Matthew chapter 1, verse 20 through 21, an angel appeared to him in a dream telling him. Certainly before Mary and those around her are aware, the mind-boggling occurrence takes place. She understood the startling miracle, which was told her because she exclaims in Luke chapter 1, verse 48 through 49, "For behold, from henceforth all generations shall call me blessed." Now, was this referring to the generations of Jews or non-Jews? For he that is mighty God has done to me a great thing. Think, shouldn't her relationship to Jesus have been one of sublime mutual respect and awe in the light of this amazing background? Shouldn't Jesus' whole family have been the first of his followers? Yet they were not. If there were truth to this Mendius continual reverence between Jesus and Mary, yet there was not, and the New Testament reports quite the contrary, which brings a heavy cloud of doubt to the whole entire miraculous event story. Let's present here how far from subliminally reverent the relationship was, indeed how disrespectful. In Matthew chapter 12, verse 46 through 50, as well as recounted by Mark in chapter 3, verse 31 through 35, and Luke chapter 8, verse 19 through 21, we read, While he yet talked to the people, behold, his mother and his brethren stood without, desiring to speak with him. Then one said to him, Behold, thy mother and thy brethren standing without, desiring to speak with thee. But he answered, he said unto him that told him, Who is my mother, and who is my brethren? And he stretched forth his hand towards his disciple and said, Behold, my mother and my brethren. Whosoever shall do the will of my Father, which is in heaven, the same is my brother and sister and mother. Now, interesting enough, his mother came to talk to him, but he did not go to her. For any son, this would be disrespect, and it would be considered lack of avadvaima, lack of honoring your father and your mother. For Jesus, whose mother reportedly bore him through the unique intervention of God in such a miraculous way, this astonishing disrespectful act from Jesus is truly remarkable. Moreover, Jesus did not speak of his mother in a loving manner, but curtly brushed her aside together with his brother. Jesus certainly could have made his point, that all who do the will of God are important, without being disrespectful or disparaging to his mother. How could he speak of his mother, Miriam, in such a manner if she were her Holy Virgin Mother of Christianity? It does not end here. A certain woman said to him, in Luke chapter 11, verse 27 through 28, Blessed is the womb that bare thee, and the paps which thou hast sucked. But he said, Rather, blessed are they that hear the word of God and keep it. Interesting comment. He reiterates his belief that those who do God's will are blessed of this world. Now, interesting enough, because here we see Jesus take a position that's more important to do, let me emphasize this word, to do God's will, to do God's commandments, to do the mitzvot of Hashem, than any type of physical relationship or connections to family ties. And by so saying, to such an extent, is violating one of those commands. But in regards to our point here, in addition to his lack of respect, of honor for his mother Mary, he evidently denies the supposed blessed state of his mother. Thus he denies the exclamation of Mary in Luke chapter 1, verse 48, where he says, All generations shall call her blessed. Where is the expected reference or the blessedness of the Virgin Mary, supposedly? Didn't come from his son. His son very clearly said, very indicated here, you got to do the commandments, which also puts a very big hole in contemporary Christianity and messianic ideals, where you're just saved by grace, and that's it, by faith in Jesus, and the work of the law and the doing the law has no implication whatsoever in a person's daily life. In other words, keeping the law is really not important anymore. Actually observing everything, we don't have to do it, says they, the Christians and a lot of these messianic leaders, because they don't have to keep the law anymore. Jesus kept it for them. Well, this is definitely not what Jesus said, which tells me that if they are in fact following this Jesus, and which we're going to take a look at, this Jewish Jesus, they have a different Jesus. Definitely not a Jewish one. But let's continue. It doesn't end here. Jesus said unto her, Woman, what have I to do with thee? John chapter 2, verse 4. The passage is also indicative of the shocking attitude that Jesus has to Mary. Jesus is supposed to respect her mother. She, Mary, is his mother, yet he coldly calls her woman and separates himself from her, as if he's completely detached from anything of her. In fact, never in the New Testament does Jesus use any enduring term for his mother, which would indicate there was some type of dysfunctional relationship between Jesus and Mary. Not only is there a lack of reverence, but there is also a strange lack of simple affection. An affection of a son to his mother. John chapter 19, verse 26 to 27. When Jesus therefore saw his mother and the disciple standing by, whom he loved, he said unto his mother, Woman, behold thy son. Then said he to his disciple, Behold thy mother. And from that hour the disciple took her unto his own home. Wow. He is there on the cross, dying, and instead of saying endearing word, Mother, I love you, and Godspeed to you, he thinks, I'm not going to be here anymore. John, or whoever this disciple is, to believe to be John, be the surrogate son to your mother here. This was now be your mother. Here we have John's description of Jesus' crucifixion, where Jesus is dying and seeing his mother near him. Remembering these are the last words Jesus spoke to Mary. And remember that she is Christianity's holy mother of the miracle birth Messiah, the Son of God. Wouldn't you think something more appropriate would have been said, like, such as, we will be in heaven together. Don't worry, Mother. I will be with you always. Wouldn't you suppose these words expressing eternity would have been his parting thoughts to his mother? Or perhaps, Mother, I'm coming back. Have comfort. Yet no such words are directed to her. Instead, he uses the words for a criminal who was being crucified with him by the Romans. In Luke chapter 23, verse 43, what is reported here is that Jesus has loved his disciple so much that he gave his mother to him and him to his mother. What a strange turn of events. Notice it is the disciple, not his mother, whom he loved. He gave it all for his talmidims. We can also guess why he had assigned her care to someone when she had at least 7 other children of her own, any one of whom should have been responsible for Mary's care. I think there's also a disregard of his brothers when he said that, because obviously the next of kin would be responsible for her mother's care. We don't find that. Luke chapter 2, verse 43, 45 through 46, 48 through 50. And when they had fulfilled the days as they returned, the child Jesus tarried behind in Jerusalem. And when they found him not, they turned back again to Jerusalem, seeking him after 3 days, and they found him in the temple, both hearing them and asking them questions. And his mother said to him, Son, why hast thou dealt with us, thus with us? Behold, thy father and I want you to hear this, because many Christians don't hear this. Behold, thy father. Who is Jesus' father? Thy father and I. Wait a minute. I thought Jesus' father was the Holy Spirit. It says in Luke, Behold, thy father and I sought me. Here we have an issue again with Jesus' area of Kavod Abba V'Ima, honoring father and mother. Now I want you to listen how he replies. This is a little bit of, we call a chutzpahdik yid. A little bit of chutzpahdik yid. He's giving a very sharp response back. Behold, thy father and I have sought thee sorrowing. They're crying, they're worried. He said unto them, How is it that ye sought me? Was he not that I must be about my father's business? And they understood not the saying which he spake unto them. What do you mean? Now he's speaking in parables? I was involved in my father's business. Well, your father's business, he's a carpenter. Of course, the reference is made reference to he was involved in Torah study. He was involved with the business of learning Torah. And this you'll find in the passage itself. First and foremost, we see here Mary did not understand Jesus' alleged mission. So obviously, there's a big problem here contextually. Because if Mary understood that Jesus was to be the Messiah, then obviously he would be in the temple studying, learning, and he'd be involved in doing the will of the Father. But it's clear from this that Mary had not been forever affected by this Christianity's miraculous birth. She understood not, which puts the whole virgin birth story into question from a logical position. Besides the textual variations that we can look at in the different manuscripts from the different texts that Christianity has used throughout its history, we see that Mary and Joseph both do not understand that Jesus must do God's work as he is the Messiah. In the scene with the angel Gabriel were true, his parents would fully comprehend Jesus' special nature and mission, but they do not. We must offer another thought about these verses concerning Jesus' attitude towards his parents. His behavior is so ill-befitting a caring son, a holy mother, let me even say a holy son at that matter. Don't you think? How could Jesus give his parents so much worry? How could he cause sorrow to his mother, who supposedly gave him birth in a miraculous way, touched by God alone, sent by the angel Gabriel to announce to Mary, you have a holy kid? Wouldn't his reverence for her would prompt him to treat her with supreme consideration? Indeed, how could Christianity's Jesus, who taught love, be so inconsiderate at all, even if his mother were not a holy being? There's definitely a problem here. Of any heavenly relationship indicated here, it completely boggles the mind. It's as if there is nothing affected in Mary's mind, neither in Jesus. In fact, the scene seems like so often occurring to a simple human being with children who forget to inform us of their whereabouts and add more white hairs upon our heads and then explain the thought we knew where they were. Oh, I was in the temple. What has been described as a complete lack of spiritual reverence of Jesus for his mother, Mary, or Miriam. This irreverence casts great suspicion on the veracity of Christianity's remarkable story of Jesus' birth. Now, let's look into the verse which shows the absence of awe for Jesus by those close to him. This should complete the picture of doubt being presented concerning Jesus' miraculous birth. Mark chapter 3, verse 21. And when his friends heard of it, they went out to lay hold on him, and they said, he is beside himself. What does it mean, beside himself? If those of you who have the strong concordance, and you look at this passage, it literally means that he is almost like bipolar. He's a berserk. He went like he's not himself. Now, I'm not going to suggest it, but the passage definitely makes an inference. He's not himself. It seems that those who were close to him, his friends, thought he was crazy, not holy. Don't you believe they would have heard of his miraculous birth? Or at least been heard whispered about it? Or that he was the expected Messiah from his parents, or his family, or from Jesus himself? Obviously they knew nothing of his alleged mission as a Messiah. They know nothing of his miraculous birth. In addition, they actually believe Jesus is mad. He's crazy. He's like, he's Meshuggah. This is what the Christian gospel leads us to think. His own friends think he's Meshuggah. Doesn't end there, my friends. John chapter 7, verse 3 to 5. His brethren therefore said to him, depart hence, and go into Judea, that his disciples also may see the works that thou doest. For neither did his brethren believe in him. Wait. Let me see this instead. Neither did his brethren believe in him. His brethren here is referred to as blood brothers. Not his cousins, not his friends, not his disciples, his brothers. During his ministry at this point, you would think his brothers would be the first one to believe in him, because they would see the miracles and the supernatural things that he would do. His brother during his ministry at this point are reported to have no belief in him. Isn't this surprising? For if the story of the miraculous birth and the announcement of the Messiah child were true, Jesus' home would have been full with its wondrous awe, yet his brothers did not believe in him. This presents a formidable obstacle in accepting the Christian story as fact, especially the Christmas story. It is clear that when James was in contact with Jesus, he did not believe in Jesus to be God's appointed Messiah. So we can deduce that he was not aware of Christianity's miraculous event. So obviously James, the just, that's later known in the book of Acts as the James the Just, who was much more pious, according to the scrolls dug out of the Dead Sea Scroll, that they respected James, Yaakov, the Hasidic, much more than Jesus himself. And for many at the time during the destruction of the temple, they felt that the destruction of the temple was going to take place as a result of James's murder. You could take a look at an incredible book regarding that, written by Professor Eisenman, called James the Brother of Jesus, where he narrates this very interesting dialogue that they respected more James than even Jesus. And many thought that James was the Messiah, not Jesus. Interesting little turnaround in history. So we can deduce that he was not aware of Christianity's miraculous event. We cannot visualize such a lack of knowledge in a family or of so momentous an occurrence. No secrecy was ever declared. Therefore, we are given to doubt. Galatians, a letter written by Paul, chapter 1, verse 19, does not contradict that, because it deals with James at a later time, after the crucifixion, when the other factors were involved. Let's take a look at Mark chapter 6 and Matthew 13:57, Luke 4 verse 24, John 4 verse 44. But Jesus said unto them, A prophet is not without honor, but in his own country and among his own kin and his own household, in his own house. Now we read here that Jesus himself said his family gives him no respect. Like Roger Dangerfield, I get no respect. Jesus got no respect from his mishpacha. They lack understanding and give him no honor. This is implicit denial of the truth of the supposed miraculous birth and the attending messianic announcement. We do not doubt that the miraculous birth could have occurred, but was probably very improbable. And as we will see, the manuscripts of those of you who have studied with me the authenticity of Matthew have already learned that that's not what the most ancient manuscripts actually read. It was not a supernatural birth. It was a natural birth. Joseph, being the husband of Mary, had relationship, intimacy, and lo and behold, a holy child was born in a holy conception, and thought to be impregnated by the Spirit as the Spirit of the Messiah. We do not doubt that, but surely God can do anything he wants. Nevertheless, we're stating that we do not have the New Testament corroboration, and therefore it's highly improbable. And all proof indicates the story does not fit the historical indications. There is no appropriate action or reaction in the lives of people involved. Jesus, Mary, the family, and others interact inappropriately. They seem obviously absent of such a miracle. Startling revelation of Christianity completely contradicts what is present. There is no awe, no reverence, where it surely should exist, which completely destroys the credibility of the virgin birth story, as well as the announcement of Jesus' messianic appointment. Now, this is the first part of a series, and in the next part we're going to look at Jesus' ethical teachings are in fact Judaism. We're talking now that we have tried to demystify this persona called Jesus, Yeshua, which the Messianics say, oh, he's a Jew, he was an Orthodox Jew. I want those Jews who were involved in Messianic congregations to please listen to this second part. This second part is very important, because this is the part that will make you realize, if you haven't yet, that what Jesus taught was 100% Judaism, not what they're teaching today in the Messianic congregation or Messianic movement, that you have to believe in him and have to believe in his sacrificial sacrifice to atone for your sins. We're going to see that what Jesus said truly contradicts Pauline theology, Pauline teaching. As a matter of fact, Pauline was a rebel against Jesus, and that rebelness continued even as he was supposedly following Jesus. Now, I will show that to you, but the most important thing you have to ask yourself, those of you involved in Christianity and those of you involved in the Messianic movement, if it was between Jesus and Paul, Jesus being the, you might say, the Messiah, who are you going to listen to? Who are you going to follow? Jesus, or a follower of him who never really saw him or never was present during his earthly ministry? Who has more credence? I would say you want to listen to the guy who said it, not some type of third generation story. And we're going to look at that a little bit later on in this series that we've started about, will the real Jesus please stand up? Will the real Jesus please stand up? Stay tuned. We'll continue with more. Shalom.